Konecki and the Unity Squad. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
For more on the new pope, we turn now to one of Argentina's leading investigative journalists, Horacio Verbitsky, who has written extensively about the career of Cardinal Bergoglio and his actions during the military dictatorship that ruled Argentina from 1976 to 1983. During that time, up to 30,000 people were kidnapped and killed. A 2005 lawsuit accused Jorge Bergoglio of being connected to the 1976 kidnappings of two Jesuit priests, Orlando Jorio and Francisco Jalix. The lawsuit was filed after the publication of Verbitsky's book, The Silence, From Paul VI to Bergoglio, The Secret Relations Between the Church and the ESMA. ESMA refers to the former Navy school that was turned into a detention center where people were tortured by the military dictatorship. The new pope has denied the charges. He twice invoked his right under Argentine law to refuse to appear in open court to testify about the allegations. When he eventually did testify in 2010, human rights activists characterized his answers as evasive.
Horacio Verbitsky joins us on the phone now from his home in Buenos Aires, an investigative journalist for the newspaper Página Dulce, page 12, it's called in English. He's also head of the Center for Legal and Social Studies, an Argentine human rights organization. We welcome you to Democracy Now! I wanted to just begin by you laying out for us what you believe is important to understand about the new Pope, Pope Francis.
The main thing to understand about Francis I is that he is a conservative populist, in the same style that John Paul II Pope was. He's a man of strong conservative positions in doctrine questions, but with a touch for popular taste. He preaches in rail stations, in the streets. He goes to the quarters, the poor quarters of the city to pray. He doesn't wait the people going into the church. He goes for them. But his message is absolutely conservative. He was opposed to abortion, to the egalitarian matrimony law. He launched a crusade against the evil when Congress was passing this law. And in the very same style that John Paul II. This is what I consider the main feature on the new Pope.
Well, now, Horacio Verbitsky, that would be true of many of the cardinals elevated during the period of John Paul and now also of Benedict XVI, this basic conservatism. But in the case of Bergoglio, there's also the issue, as you have documented, and several other journalists in Argentina, of his particular role or accusations about his involvement in the dirty wars in Argentina. Could you talk about that and some of the things that, because you've been a leading investigative reporter uncovering the relations between the church and the government in terms of the dirty wars?
Of course. He was accused by two Jesuit priests of having surrendered them to the military. They were a group of Jesuits that were under Bergoglio direction. He was the provincial superior of the order in Argentina, being very, very young. He was the younger provincial Jesuit in history. At 36 years, he was provincial. During a period of great political activity in the Jesus Company, he stimulated the social work of the Jesuits, but when the military coup overthrew the Isabel Perón government, he was in touch with the military that ousted this government and asked the Jesuits to stop their social work. And when they refused to do it, he stopped protecting them, and he let the military know that they were not more inside the protection of the Jesus company, and they were kidnapped. And they accused him for this deed. He denies this. He said to me that he tried to get them free, that he talked with former dictator Videla and with former dictator Macera to have them free. And during a long period, I heard the two versions. The version of the two kidnapped priests that were released after 6 months of torture and captivity, and the version of Bergoglio. This was an issue divisive in the human rights movement to which I belong, because the president founding of CELS, Center for Legal and Social Studies, Emilio Mignone, said that Bergoglio was accomplice of the military, and a lawyer of the CELS, Alicia Oliveira, that was a friend of Bergoglio, tell the other part of the story, that Bergoglio helped them. This was the two versions. But during the research for one of my books, I found documents in the archive of the Foreign Relations Minister in Argentina, which, for my understanding, give an end to the debate and show the double standard that Bergoglio used. The first document is a note in which Bergoglio asked the ministry to the renewal of the passport of one of these two Jesuits that after his releasing was living in Germany, asking that the passport was renewed without necessity of this priest coming back to Argentina. The second document is a note from the officer that received the petition recommending to his superior, the minister, the refusal of the renewal of the passport. And the third document is a note from the same officer telling that this priest has links with subversion, that was the name that the military gave to all the people involved in opposition to the government, political or armed opposition to the military, and that he was jailed in the mechanic school of the Navy, and saying that this information was provided to the officer by Father Jorge Mario Bergoglio, provincial superior of the Jesuit company. This means, to my understanding, a double standard. He asked the passport given to the priest in a formal note with his signature, but under the table he said the opposite and repeated the accusations that produced the kidnapping of this priest.
And these priests, can you explain, Horacio, what happened to these two priests, to Orlando Iorio and Francisco Helix?
Yes. Orlando, after his releasing, went to Rome.
How were they found?
Sorry?
How were they found? In what condition were they? What had happened to them?
Well, he was released, both of them were released, dragged, confused, transported by helicopter to in the outskirts of Buenos Aires, were abandoned as left by a drag in very bad condition. They were tortured, they were interrogated. One of the interrogators had extraordinary knowings about theological questions that induced one of them, Orlando Llorio, to think that the own provincial Bergoglio had been involved in this interrogatory.
He said that Bergoglio himself had been part of the his own interrogation, this Jesuit priest?
He told me that he had the impression that the own provincial Bergoglio was present during the interrogatory, in which one of the interrogators had extraordinary knowledge of theological questions. And when released, he went to Rome. He lived several years in Rome, then came back to Argentina. And when coming back to Argentina, he was incardinated in the Quilmes diocese in Great Buenos Aires, where the bishop was one of the leaders of the progressive branch of the Argentine church, opposite to that of Bergoglio. And Orlando Llorio denounced Bergoglio. I received his testimony when Bergoglio was elected to the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. And Bergoglio, I interviewed Bergoglio also, and he denied the charges, and he told me that he had defended them. And Orlando Llorio got me in touch with Francisco Jalix, that was living in Germany. I talked with him, and he confirmed the story, but he didn't want to be mentioned in my piece because he told me that he preferred to not remember this sad part of his life and to pardon, and he was for oblivion and pardon. That he was, during a lot of years, very resented against Bergoglio, but that he had decided to forgot and forget. And when I released the book with the story, one Argentine journalist working for a national agency, Ignacio Covarrubias, who has been a disciple of Jalix, talked with him and asked him for the story, and Jalix told him that he would not affirm, not denied the story.
Horacio Verbitsky, I'd like to ask you about another priest who was involved in the dirty wars, Christian von Warnock, who was a former chaplain of the police department in Argentina, and also later was convicted of being involved.
He was convicted. He's in jail, in a common jail. But the Argentine church, during the tenure of Bergoglio, hasn't punished him in canonical terms. He was convicted by the human justice, but by the church standards, he is always a priest. And this tell something about Bergoglio and the Argentine church also.
And von Warnock was involved in murders, tortures, and kidnappings. Could you detail some of the crimes that he was convicted of committing?
Bergoglio involved in the crimes of von Bernie?
No, von Warnock. Von Warnock, I said.
Oh, von Bernie was active part in torture and killings, and he was convicted not as an accomplice, but as a participant in the crimes. He was present during the torture sessions from Bernie. And there is not just one chaplain. There are some others that are under trial in this moment. Chaplain Regueiro is under house arrest because he's an older man. Chaplain Citelli in Santa Fe province for being present during torture sessions. So there are a lot of them that were part of the dirty war.
I wanted to read, Horacio, a part of the State Department cable released by WikiLeaks that references, the Roman Catholic priest Christian von Wernick, who you were just talking about, convicted in 2007 of being an accomplice in several cases of murder, torture, and illegal imprisonment in Argentina during the military dictatorship. It notes the conviction came, quote, at a time when some observers consider Roman Catholic Primate Cardinal Bergoglio to be a leader of the opposition to the Kirchner administration because of his comments about social issues. The von Wernick case could also have the effect, some believe, of undermining the church's and, by extension, Cardinal Bergoglio's moral authority or capacity to comment on political, social, or economic questions, unquote. That was a State Department cable that was released by WikiLeaks. Horacio, could you respond?
We can go as Jack the Stripper by parts. First of all, the State Department considered that Bergoglio was the chief of the opposition to the Kirchner government, and I agree with this statement. The State Department tells also that the conviction of Father von Wernick can be directed to undermine Bergoglio's position. This is not true, to my understanding. The conviction of Father von Wernick is a consequence of a trial that started much before the Kirchners arriving to power and has its own judicial logic and not a political timetable.
Horacio, are you still there?
Sorry?
Let me ask you a question. We thought we lost you for a minute. We're talking to Horacio Verbitsky, a leading Argentine investigative journalist, well known for his human rights investigations. I wanted to ask you about this issue of hiding political prisoners when a human rights delegation came to Argentina. Can you tell us when this was, what are the allegations, and what was the role, if any, of Bergoglio, now Pope Francis?
No, in this episode, Bergoglio has no intervention. The intervention was from the cardinal that in that time was the chief of the church in Buenos Aires. That is the position that Bergoglio has in the present. But in that time, he was not Archbishop of Buenos Aires. When the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights came into Argentina to investigate allegations of human rights violations, the Navy took 60 prisoners out of ESMA and got them to a village that was used by the Cardinal Aramburu to his weekends. And in this weekend propriety were also the celebration each year of the new seminarians that ended their studies. In this villa, in the outskirts of Buenos Aires, were the prisoners during the visit of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. And when the commission visited ESMA, they did not find the prisoners that were supposed to be there, because
ESMA being the naval barracks where so many thousands of Argentines were held. So where were they?
Yes, but Bergoglio has no intervention in this fact. Indeed, he helped me to investigate the case. He gave me the precise information about in which tribunal was the document demonstrating that this villa was owned by the church.
He said that they were hidden in a villa that was owned by the Catholic Church?
Yes, the prisoners were held in a weekend house that was the weekend house of the Cardinal Archbishop of Buenos Aires in that time. And Bergoglio gave me the precise information about the tribunal in which were the documents affirming this relationship between this propriety and the Archbishop of Buenos Aires.
We have to break, and then we're going to come back to Horacio Verbitsky, as well as our guest in studio named Ernesto Seman, who is a historian at New York University, former reporter for the Argentine newspaper, both the same as Horacio's newspaper, Página 12, and Clarín, where he reported on politics and human rights, as well as, well, Father Bergoglio, now Pope Francis. This is Democracy Now! We'll be back in a minute. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.